CE5 session on a mountain ridge near Hawksview Road in Buckingham, Virginia on November 9th, 2018 from approximately 4:00 p.m. until 9:00 p.m. Before we get started, I want to take just a moment and talk about what a CE5 session is and why we do it. If you're not familiar with what a CE5 session is, the abbreviation stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. This is the only type of extraterrestrial contact which is deliberately initiated by human beings for the purpose of building relationships with non-terrestrial beings. We make this contact in an effort to communicate, acquire knowledge, and for the overall betterment of our planet and our society. The ultimate goal of these efforts is the eradication of the current status quo of hatred, fear, and separation, which has been in place for far too long. Our current state of existence is not sustainable. We're destroying our planet and ourselves, and there is a better way. We can learn from those who have been where we are and evolved past it, if we are only willing to make the effort to do so. We, at We Own the Light, are some of the ones who are willing to do so. You can do this too. Anyone can. So here's some technical info for you about our session for this evening, just in case you're interested. By far, the most important information here is the first bullet. Our session began at about 7 p.m. with our equipment set up, but that was followed by a playing of something called crop circle tones and a short quote-unquote field meditation. Both of these items are resources that can be found on Dr. Stephen Greer's website at www.seriousdisclosure.com/apps. And these can be used and should be used in any CE5 session that you're going to do. They're very, very helpful, and it also keeps continuity between the sessions, not only for your own purposes, but also between the groups, the separate groups worldwide that are working on this. The other thing I'd like to say is that I found that my contact is often better if for the majority of the day prior to the session, I just kind of concentrate on it and put it out there that I'm intending to come for a visit. It seems to help with the connection, and it increases the amount of contact that takes place once I arrive. So I tend to do that anytime that I'm anticipating having a session, just in case anyone would be listening. So if you want to read the rest of this, I suggest you hit the pause button. If you've seen any of our other clips or features, you'll know that most of our evidence that's presented comes in the form of videos. However, occasionally we get some really good still photos, and that's what this particular video focuses on. There are going to be 3 still pictures that were taken over the course of 6 minutes, and we're going to go through those and explain them to you. So here we go. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this first image before I bring it up on the screen. We'd been there for a few hours, and we were actually getting ready to end the session. We'd seen a lot of sparkling lights, had heard some noises. I hadn't reviewed any of our footage, so I couldn't count for what was on the cameras, but I was really kind of disappointed because the first time that I had been at this location, I had had some amazing personal experiences here, and those will be talked about in another video, but I was a little disappointed because it wasn't anything as dramatic as my first visit there. So it was cold, we were getting ready to leave, and I had gone around to the back of the Jeep to put some equipment away, and we don't use any lights, so I get in the back there with my arms, my hands up in the back of the Jeep, and I just kind of stand there and feel around. And because I wasn't looking down at my hands, my head was still up straight, kind of looking off to the side. And out of the corner of my eye, I see these really bright flashes of light near the front passenger side of the Jeep. And I yelled at my partner and said, "Hey, can you take the camera, get around here real quick and take some shots?" And he had a handheld IR camera at the time. And I asked him if he could please take some quick shots in succession up near the front of the Jeep to see if we could capture anything. So here's what we got. So here's image number 1. And obviously the first thing that we noticed after we got back to the shop and were able to view these pictures were these 3 amazing spheres that are right in the center of the picture. And we noticed that they appear to be exhibiting their own source of light. And to clarify that, we're on the top of a mountain. There's nothing there. There's not even any electrical lines going through there. There's no roads. There's no cars. We have no flashlights. The headlights on the Jeep were not on. There was no source of external light at this location. It was pitch black. And so therefore, this is not a reflection. These are emanating their own light, period. And then the next thing that we noticed was that they exhibit this really heavy texture, kind of like golf balls. We thought that was really interesting. And then we noticed that they appear to be lying along a radius, as if they're along the edge of something that's curved. And if you look, this one's larger and closer. This one is arcing away a little bit, and this one is farther along the arc and seems to be almost going around the curve of a radius to the point where you can only see part of it. So we were marveling at this, and then all of a sudden I noticed that there's something back here. And obviously we can't see it really well, so we were trying to decide what to do about that. And under normal circumstances, we will slow videos down, and we will crop things and that sort of stuff in order to make the presentations more understandable for our audience. The one thing that we try not to do is to mess with the picture or the video itself. We don't mess with the color or the contrast or anything like that, because we'd like for these to be as original as possible. However, there are exceptions to that rule, and this is one of them. We wanted to try to see what this was, and the only way to do that was to change the contrast of this picture. So we're going to move forward, and I'm going to show you what we found when we did that. So real quick, here is the whole picture after we started increasing the contrast. We didn't mess with the color. We were just playing with the contrast to try to get this whatever this thing is in the back to come out. And I realized that it's starting to take on almost like a humanoid shape, and I'm getting really excited at this point about what I'm seeing. So let's move on to the next one, which I actually cropped and enlarged and accented this area a little more, and I was pretty stunned at what I saw. So when we continued to increase the contrast and we cropped and enhanced this for size, you can see very clearly what we were able to come up with. This, to me, there's no question, this is very humanoid. We've got an upper torso and head here. Here's the head, 2 eyes, a bridge of the nose, a narrow neck, and what appears to be a fairly narrow chest area. And I'm assuming that the rest of it's not visible because it's not fully materialized. And I've got something that kind of supports that that theory, because we do have 2 more pictures after this, and the second of the 2 captures this being again, and it has changed in the few minutes between the first picture and the third picture. So let's move on and look at the next 2, and then we'll kind of circle back around to this. This is image number 2, and after taking the first picture facing straight ahead, my partner then turned slightly to the right and took this picture. And this second picture captures only the 3rd sphere in the line. If you count from left to right from the first picture, this only captures the 3rd one to the right because of the change in his direction. So I'd like to point out that if these spheres were dust or anything else that wasn't stationary, if they were pollen or anything that is affected by the environment, by wind or by humidity or whatever, they would not have still been visible in exactly the same location as they were in the first picture. And you'll see this again in the third picture. They are still stationary in exactly the same position. So let's look at the second picture, and then we'll go on to the third. This is the full-size picture, image number 2. And as I said, that third sphere to the right from the original picture is the only one that's visible in this shot. And you can see it still is exhibiting the light. It's still exhibiting the same texture. And even though the other two spheres aren't in the frame for reference, it also still appears to be holding the same position. So the third picture is going to show all 3 of these spheres again. And let's go look at that one. Now we're ready for the third and final image in this series. For this shot, after turning to the right to take the second picture, my partner moved and turned back facing exactly forwards once again. So he was in the exact same position that he was in when he took the first picture. And you'll see that we managed to get a duplicate, nearly a duplicate of what we had in the first picture. And again, please keep in mind, these 3 pictures were taken over the span of 6 minutes. So if these things were dust or pollen or anything that was not able to hold its own position, they would not still be in the picture, or they would be in a dramatically different location in the picture. So let's move on and look at the third image. This is the third and final image, and as you can see, we've still got all 3 spheres lying along the same radius that appears to be moving away along a curve. We've still got this figure here, although in this picture it appears to be slightly different than in the first picture. It is taking on more the appearance of one of these spheres, starting to exhibit its own light, and it looks almost more like 2 circles on top of each other that are of equal size, rather than a figure with a larger head and a smaller body taking shape. So we noticed that immediately when we started reviewing this picture, and so once again we wanted to enhance and crop that section to see what this figure was doing. So let's look at that. And here is image number 3, cropped and enhanced to showcase that figure on the left behind sphere number 1. And as you can see, our suspicions were correct when we first started looking at this as a full picture. This is very different than what it was in the first image. You can still see some remnant maybe of eyes and that bridge of a nose, but the long narrow neck is gone. The very slight area of the chest is gone, and this actually appears to be taking on the shape and texture and characteristics of one of these spheres. And we just found that mind-blowing, because then it made us wonder, are these spheres really like some sort of energetic portal lying along the edge of a ship? Or are these actually entities and they're all morphing back and forth? We just don't know. And we called them in. We feel very strongly, very confident that they were there because we asked for them to be. But at the same time, we're not well versed enough in these communication exercises to be able to definitively say exactly what's going on when we're looking at something like this. And I'm not ashamed to say that. We are making this effort. We're making this effort day in and day out, and we will continue to make this effort until we get to a place where we can definitively say exactly what's going on in a situation like this, and hopefully be able to give clear examples of communication that's taking place between us and these entities. So we've got one more slide. What I did was I took both of these enlarged images and I put them side by side so that they were easy to compare. So let's move on and look at that one real quick. And here's the comparison of the two pictures, image 1, image 3, as they were enhanced and cropped. You can see that there's a big difference between this figure and this figure. It's basically in the same place. There seems to be a little bit shorter distance between this and the sphere than there is in this one. This sphere also seems to be maybe morphing a little on its own. It's the area, the section of the sphere that's exhibiting that light has changed a little and rolled upwards, whereas here it's facing more directly to the left. It seems to have a little more darker texture taking place in there, but that could be the result of me trying to enhance this. You got to keep in mind, I'm a field investigator. I'm not tech savvy, so I do the best I can with this. But obviously, the biggest difference is you've very clearly got this face. It's this humanoid shape and figure, but that's definitely not human. And then a couple minutes later, you've got it doing something really interesting over here. So although we can't definitively say that we know exactly what's going on here, what I can say is I feel very, very, very confident that this was deliberate contact made by extraterrestrial beings simply because I had requested it. And that in and of itself at this stage in the game is absolutely amazing. I chose these clips from the dozen or so that we gathered during this particular session because they represented typical events which normally occur during our CE5 sessions. All of these clips basically show the same thing, the energetic signature or form of intelligent beings who were generous enough to make the effort to manifest and attempt to communicate simply because we requested it. If you're not familiar with what a CE5 session is, the abbreviation stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. This is the only type of extraterrestrial contact which is deliberately initiated by human beings for the purpose of building relationships with non-terrestrial beings for the purpose of communication, the acquisition of knowledge, and the betterment of our planet and our society. The ultimate goal of these efforts is the eradication of the current status quo of hatred, fear, and separation which has been in place for far too long. Our current state of existence is not sustainable. We are destroying our planet and ourselves. There is a better way. We can learn from those who have been where we are and managed to evolve past it, if we're only willing to make the effort to do so. We are some of the ones who are willing to do so without question. You can do this too. Anyone can. All it takes is willingness to push back against the status quo with fearlessness and to not be afraid of the unknown. We Own the Light is dedicated to the enrichment and evolution of humanity's spirituality, and we're in direct opposition to the fear-mongering and secrecy that fosters society's current state of hatred and separation. We work toward this through showing others the energetic connectivity between all things, including those which have been traditionally feared or thought of as being dangerous, especially extraterrestrial beings. I once heard Dr. Stephen Greer say, "They might own the night, but we own the light." And for those of us willing to do whatever it takes to be a cog in the wheel that crushes the current societal and political state to smithereens, no truer statement has ever been uttered. This channel, our website, and all of our efforts, past, present, and future, are dedicated to this cause, and we are indebted to Dr. Greer for his tireless pursuit of the same. As St. Francis of Assisi was quoted to say, "All of the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light from a single candle." And he was so right. We have no fear of the darkness because we own the light. Do you have the courage to own your light? We think you do.